You know, the site's prohibited, but you know what we did do? Did you see the white striping?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Elizabeth Kennedy Wong. I work with Portland Parks, and I just want to thank you guys all for being here today. We're celebrating the formal opening of the Waud Bluff Trail, and Lenny informs me this is about the 10-year anniversary of a project that started when BES Planning and, I already forgot the third party, sorry, got together and actually formally did a plan on how do we increase access and connectivity to Swan Island. And I want to say this is really a celebration of a partnership between a community vision and bureaus coming together and really figuring out how to get something done. So thank you all for being here. Thank everybody for the work that they've done to make this trail happen. And as we get started, there are a couple people you're going to hear from today. Scott Mazzee, Lenny Anderson, who of course everybody knows as the visionary behind the Swan Island TMA, and Mike Abate, the director of Portland Parks. And so now we're just going to go ahead and introduce Scott Mazzee. Yes, you.
Oh.
Come on.
All right. She doesn't do a lot of fluff, she said. So, yeah, my name is Scott Mazzee, and I live just up on the bluff right here, and I've been in the University Park neighborhood for about 10 years, and first met Lenny Anderson about 8 years ago at a Swan Island Urban Renewal Area meeting, and he said, hey, we're interested in building some momentum around this trail that we're talking about here and the rest of the things that we are envisioning for Swan Island. So I said, sure, I'm looking into getting involved in something. So I would say, as we do, that the rest is history. But we gathered some neighbors together, including Francie Royce over here, and Pam Arden, who you may have seen at the top of the trail, and Joe Adamski, and Steve Weir, and maybe, I don't know if there were any others. That might have been it that came to our first meeting up at the Madrona Hill Cafe. And then we formed this group, called it npGREENWAY, for North Portland Greenway, advocacy group, and started having meetings and calling folks and emailing folks and showing up at Metro, testifying in City Council, sending postcards in to ODOT saying they need to fund this Waud Bluff Trail. And it's really, really our great pleasure to be here today to celebrate the opening. We were here a couple years ago now when we had the golden shovels up top and dug the ceremonial groundbreaking. And I know that the neighbors, my neighbors in the University Park neighborhood and those in Cathedral Park and Portsmouth and St. John's beyond, as well as the University of Portland residents, are very pleased to have Willamette Boulevard back to normal. And big thanks to Susan Watt, the construction manager for Parks, and George Lazovoy, who was the landscape architect on persevering through all this, and everybody else that was involved. So thank you very much for coming out today.
Thanks, Scott. And now we're going to hear a couple words from our director, Mike Abate. He's been the director of Portland Parks for about 2 years, and we are thrilled to have him.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Because this is about the best thing that a parks director gets to do. No, not figure out how to work the microphone, but actually come to a new park. And I was here when we did the groundbreaking, and see a lot of familiar faces. You know, trails are so important in our parks and recreation system. And you know what? Let's be honest. They even transcend our park and recreation system. They enter into our transportation system, and they connect people, and they connect neighborhoods and people in jobs who now have a really easy way to get down the hill. So trails are really important, and I'm glad that this is a good example of how simple trail projects can be, right? It's just a trail, and pretty much wasn't the grade already there anyway? I mean, couldn't you pretty much make it happen? the 2020 vision, which is our sort of roadmap to the future, had some really big goals for Portland Parks and Recreation. One of the goals was to acquire a whole bunch new, that's really good English, a whole lot of new natural areas, acreage. That was one goal. Another goal was to become the walking city of the West and to build lots and lots and lots of trails. And I use those two because they're both important, and we've greatly achieved one of them, natural areas. We have acquired a lot of natural areas around the city, and you have access into nature in ways that citizens of Portland have never had before. But the trail piece of it has been really hard. And I just want to recognize the fact that when we say thank you to people who helped make the Waud Bluff Trail happen, we're talking about some heavy lifting. This is not easy to do. Everything from acquiring the land to what it's going to connect to, I mean, let's be honest, we're crossing a railroad here, we're going up a steep slope. These are difficult projects, but they're super important, and I want us to recognize the magnitude of everybody here and others who aren't here who put their time, energy, sweat into making this happen. So Elizabeth said a couple of words. I was hoping that she said a couple hundred words or a couple thousand words, but I do have a lot to be thankful, a lot of people to thank. You know, it's 1,700 linear feet. In some of our maps, it's barely a blip on the screen. But if you're here, so you know that it's 1,700 really, really, really important feet. And every one of those feet was needed to put the whole connection together. We will have a connectivity in North Portland that we've never had before. It'll allow people to get to their school, to get to their park, to get to their job, to get to their home in ways that we haven't had. So that's why those of you have turned out, because you understand that this is very significant. Ultimately, the North Portland Greenway is going to get us all the way out to Kelly Point Park and the East Bank Esplanade at two opposite ends. That's a really great goal, and that's, okay, let's hear it for that goal, right? And that's 10.4 miles. So what's 1,700? About a third of a mile, maybe, something like that. Well, we have other pieces in process, other pieces completed. But the hard part about a trail is it's made up of lots of little segments, and you can get a little segment like this one done. We got another little segment done over at Pier Park and Chimney Park with the bridge across the railroad there. That's another big heavy lift. Thank you. I just want to kind of little sidebar conversation here. Thank all of you who got involved in that process because it wasn't an easy process. And for Portland Parks and Recreation, we greatly benefited from your advocacy, from your perspective, and frankly your retelling of what actually happened in decision making on that project. So thank you very much for that. There are many people to thank, but is Roy Hickola here? Roy?
He chose not to come down.
He chose not to come down, okay. And Bob Kolf, I want to give a special thanks to Kolf Construction and just start there. This was a complicated construction, and Susan was telling us, those of us who were walking with her on the way down, there's a lot that you don't see that went in to keep that trail in place for a long time. So let's give Kolf Construction a big hand. This represents hundreds of people. I'm going to name a few, and then let's give them all a big hand. The railroad, Union Pacific Railroad, Willamette Industrial Urban Renewal Area, the Federal Highway Administration, and we've got some key folks here. Mel Huey from Metro. Let's give Mel a big hand. Come on. Mel is our region's biggest, strongest, and most accomplished advocate for trails. So thank you, Mel, for being a big part of this. Within the city, it has not just been Parks and Recreation. We've had some help from Bureau of Environmental Services, and also to Catherine Levine and Radel Kilgore from the Bureau of Transportation. Thank you for your help. And to the folks here, to the Swan Island Business Association, UPS, Coast Guard, Adidas, Daimler, you guys have been tremendously patient, and we thank you very much for your support on this project and your support of Portland Parks and Recreation in general. So let's give all of them a big hand. I want to take a second and name a few people at Portland Parks and Recreation who have worked on this a long time. And I want to start with a couple people that are not here today. They no longer are working with parks, but who spent hours and hours. And if you know Greg Everhart and Patty Freeman, you know that they worked hard to make this, bring this thing to reality. But as mentioned before there, Susan as our construction manager, George as our project manager and landscape architect, Lisa Tyler, Elizabeth right here who helped with public involvement, and Tanya Curiel who helped with this event. Let's give all of the parks folks a big hand. It's an honor to be able to lead an organization with people like this. We just have amazing staff. It's projects like this, trails that make access easier, connect to a vital business area, actually reduce the need for motorized vehicles and transportation. That is really part of what makes our city special, and we are special. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming and turn it back over to Elizabeth.
So we have one more person to give the floor to, and I just want to introduce him by saying one of my first jobs for the city was a policy advisor for transportation. And one of the first phone calls that I received was from this gentleman who called me and said, "Hey, you want to go on a bike ride on Swan Island?" And I was like, "Sure, where's Swan Island?" And I was like, "It's a bike ride. How fun could that be?" And he first takes me down Greeley, which I thought was pretty terrifying. And then he takes me somewhere out there on a bunch of really big gravel, and I had really skinny tires. And then he took me up this really, really big hill. And I was like, wow, this is a great job. But that was Lenny Anderson, and his way of convincing people of the rightness of the work that he does is to take you out and show you the work that he is doing. And he has been doing this for Swan Island for at least a decade. And I think kind of the amazing transformation that he has made on Swan Island, this area that actually makes its living off of building trucks and moving large objects, is actually very, very committed to getting people out of their cars. And helping to get trails like this built is a large bit of what Lenny does. So I think it's very appropriate we give some time for Lenny to talk.
Thank you. Thanks. We'll make this brief before the rain comes. I did bring along a copy of the Swan Island Trails Action Plan from January 2004. This was done by Alta, and there's a good little story behind that. But BES, Francie will remember this, because we had a little group that met every quarter, and we got Bureau of Environmental Services, who were taking the blackberries out, and Bureau of Planning, and the TMA, the Swan Island Transportation Management Association. We had extra money in those days somehow. Anyway, we put together a little pot of money and hired Alta. Mia told me later they were about to close their doors, so I don't know, we get some credit for this multinational corporation now, and they did this action plan 10 years ago, and on it was this, and I want to say three things. One is, this is a beautiful trail. It is a really beautiful trail, and part of that's the great job that was done by the designers, the project managers, the construction, the guys who drove the piles and installed the bridge. And a big thank you to them. Part of the beauty of this trail, and I hope you'll tell your friends and neighbors, is this beautiful bluff canopy of oak, madrone, and maple. It is a incredible. I remember when I took my colleague Cynthia up there for the first time, and we saw a flicker, and we saw, you know, come at the right time, and it's not just you, it's you and the birds and so on. It's a beautiful, beautiful trail. The second thing is, it has been a long time, and there's a lot of people to thank, but I had a whole list here, but I want to be quick. So I'm going to focus on one guy, because to get something like this done, ideas are great, but then you need the money. And we had a grant application into Metro and ODOT for this. And there was a public testimony, and I reserved some time and asked our good contact at UPS to come, and he came, and there was the spot, my spot. I said, take it. I said, do you have something to read or present to these people? And he said, no, I don't need that. He just went up there, and Thad Collins said something to the effect that when I was a kid, I came down this path to work at UPS, and now I manage a hub or a branch, and the young people that work for me come down that. I need this trail built. And Matt Garrett was the District 1 ODOT guy, and another beautiful, handsome Irishman. And I was waiting for him, one Irishman to another. I was waiting for Matt to pull out his checkbook and say how much and write the check. That's how compelling that testimony was. And I think without that, we would never have gotten this trail. So Thad Collins from UPS has always been special in my memory of this project. And it was so nice to get an email from him yesterday saying he'd be here. Thad, raise your hands here so everyone can know that you are a first-class comrade in this struggle to do what? We believe on Swan Island, and we think this is true on I-5 and the famous Columbia River Bridge project, the obstacle to moving freight are too many people alone in their cars during the peak hours. And so this is a freight project. Because when we have two people ride their bikes down here, or two people walk down from where they live, walking to work is the most blessed commute there is. We make room for one of these Western Star trucks hauling, I don't know how many thousand pounds. Every two vehicles we remove, either with transit. By the way, I was telling folks from the university that please come down and grab the 85 right there. You're 12 minutes from the Rose Quarter. So what we are doing here with the Waud Bluff Trail, with the Going to the River Trail, with the Captain's Walk that we'll be dedicating this afternoon, is helping people get to the island and around the island without having to get in the car and drive, so that we can move freight. End of story. I'm on my way out of here. It's wonderful to be able to go out with a project like this, and I want to thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Lenny. And before we let you eat cake, we want to make sure that we call out a couple of other folks. One is Sarah Angel, who has the great good fortune of taking over the reins of the Swan Island TMA from Lenny. And I have no doubt that in 5 years we will be singing your high praises as much as we sing Lenny's. And that's Sarah. The University Park, Arbor Lodge, and Overlook Neighborhood Associations, Daimler Trucks, the North Portland Neighborhood Services, the University of Portland, and who? The pilot? Oh. Of course. And the Northwest Trail Alliance, and Tom Archer is here. So thank you again, everybody who made this trail possible. Thank you all for coming out today to celebrate with us. There is cake over there and coffee. And we also have copies of the Portland Parks and Recreation Summer Free-for-All program, which contains literally hundreds of free activities for you guys to enjoy all summer long. So thank you very much.